What's happening, people? Welcome back to the Scarfey Spurs Talk Podcast. The international break is over. Tottenham are back. It is a busy next 25 days or so with 7 games in that period before, yes, again, you guessed it, another international break. So tonight should be an excellent show. You know who I am. I'm Harry Scarfe. As always, I'm your host for tonight. I say always, most of the time anyway, but let's introduce my fantastic panel for tonight, starting with Gary Ward. Gary, thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing good, mate. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for asking. You've been keeping well during the international break?
I hate international break. I hate it. I don't like that. There's no La Liga, there's no Serie A, there's no Premier League. I don't like any of that. I'm not a big fan of international football. I watched the second international game, and it felt like the longest 90 minutes of my life. We were decent. I'm not the biggest fan of international, so I'm very happy that we don't have to watch anymore and we can get back to the Premier League.
I totally agree with you. I think you summarised that nicely. I mean, I was even at the England-Wales game myself at Wembley, and it was great, but it's not quite Tottenham, is it? And there's nothing against England. In a friendly anyway, it's not quite the same. I share that, but thank you, Gary, for your time tonight. Should be a good one. Martin, welcome back onto the podcast. Your second appearance. Thanks so much for coming back. Of course, you are joining from the UK, like Gary, but you're originally from Slovakia. So firstly, how are you doing? And secondly, talk to us a little bit about that, which is interesting.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be on, glad to meet new faces. Quite excited for the podcast. So yeah, I lived in England for 15 years and I moved back to Slovakia, which is where I was also born, in 2017. So it's almost been a decade here. But I've kept in contact with my primary school friends, which are Tottenham fans, and I try and make it to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium at least once or twice a year. So my last game was the AZ Alkmaar game in March. So, yeah.
Oh, nice stuff. Thank you. It's nice when you shared that as well. I was interested to hear about it. So thank you so much, Martin, and appreciate you coming on once again. Dustin, thank you very much for stepping in last minute as a couple of others dropped out. Really appreciate it. Would you like to tell people where you're joining from and what time of the day it is? Because this is incredibly interesting. Hope you're well as well.
Hi, I'm Dustin from Singapore. As most people that live in the East would tell you, we normally wake up at all kinds of ungodly hours to watch Spurs, and it's 3 a.m. now.
Absolutely insane. Dustin, thank you so much for coming on. Honestly, I did not expect you to do that. So I can't put into words how grateful I am for you to come on at that time as well. That's commitment. I mean, I don't know about you. I don't know if I could get up at 3 a.m. I'd like to say I could try, but whether I would or not is complete other thing. So hats off to you tonight. Absolutely incredible. So thank you. It'll show you how much you love Tottenham. But thank you to all that are coming in to listen. If you're listening live on YouTube, please get involved. And anything that's being discussed, if you're listening afterwards on YouTube as well, please to like and subscribe. If you're listening via audio, so podcast platform, don't forget to drop us a follow and a 5-star review. Before we get into it, before we talk football, let's quickly go through the ever-growing partners list. So firstly, you've got the Kitman. You can check out the Kitman for all your genuine classic past season football shirts, shorts and scarves. Relieve former players and memorable goals with some retro memorabilia from the Kitman. And you can use the coupon SCARFY15, capital S, for a 15% discount. Then you've got Everything Spurs Discord, which is one of the biggest online Tottenham communities with over 10,000 members worldwide. It's owned by Wilsey. I say every time, regular here at the Scarfey Spurs Podcast, renowned Spurs content creator, top one, also part of my thumbnails team. Inside his server, you'll find live match chat during every single Spurs game, transfer news and rumours, loads of Spurs banter and debates, plus gaming, FPL, off-topic chats, all to keep things fun, really, between matches. It's basically your 24/7 virtual hub for Tottenham fans. So if you're Spurs, get involved and join today. That is Discord server. Dan Gaze's Support Services is our third partner, and they have experienced staff to support young people to fulfill their potential, develop their skills, and be active and positive members of their community. Key aims for them are to build direct relationships, be a positive and consistent role model, coach and mentor young people to develop skills, and teach self-regulation. They have a wealth in experience in social, emotional, and mental health as tutors, teachers, senior leaders, and high-level TAs. They're proud sponsors of Nick Freeman and former Tottenham footballer Harvey White. I'm also an ambassador for them. In the 290 are our fourth partner. You can check them out for any football analysis or scouts. That's who they're aiming to get involved, or any aspiring analysts and scouts, as well as current ones. In the 290 is a Discord community. Also, this one, though, to share workflows, to get real feedback and to learn together. And last but not least, our latest partner in the last few days or so, and that is Tottenham Programme Collector, who supply Tottenham programs, old Tottenham programs, handbooks, match tickets, and fan size. 100% of every sale is donated to charity. Let's get straight into it then. So, big news this week is to do with Fabio Paratici and Johan Lange. For those who have been living under a rock and haven't seen it, Fabio Paratici's returned to Tottenham, and Johan Lange has been given a promotion. So, Vinay Vanakasham, the CEO, has explained the roles of both. So, Johan Lange is in charge of academy, scouting, performance analysis, and football insights, whereas Fabio Paratici is involved, or in charge of is a better word, of transfer windows, players, and loan and pathways departments. Vinay said both of them will come together, though, for squad planning and player recommendations. Gary, can I start with you? And I want to talk about Paratici in particular first. What are your thoughts on Paratici returning? Do you see this as a good thing, personally?
Yeah, happy for him to be back. He's had some good benefits in the players that he has brought to the club. Obviously, there's been a few clangers, but yeah, every sporting director or director of football is not going to get every single signing correct. But I think that we could probably look at most of our better players have come through either his recommendation or signings. So yeah, happy to have him back. I like the two-man setup as well. I think it's the last time I was on here that we spoke, and I said that I'd like to see them both together. My view would have been maybe one working on outgoings and one working on incomings, because we just have a really bad inability to sell players. But look, we got Paratici back. Everybody seems to be very keen on him. Has a good reputation around the grounds, around the team, and around the staff. So yeah, I'm happy that he's back, and let's hope that planning starts immediately, which if you watch the video on their YouTube channel, kind of seems that planning's already started between them both. So yeah, interesting to see where this goes.
Should be good. Thank you, Gary, for your thoughts on that. Martin, did you expect this to happen? Are you surprised it's happened? Because there's reports that it was in jeopardy. Paratici returned to Tottenham after Levy left. So it's taken you by surprise a little bit. It actually has happened.
Definitely. It took me by surprise because there were rumours in the summer that potentially he would be joining back. Then there were rumours he was joining AC Milan, so it looked like he wasn't joining us anymore. And then there were reports, of course, that he was in jeopardy, that there was a potential extra ban or even jail time. So I was definitely surprised, but in a positive way. So I'm very happy that he's back in position.
Thank you, Martin, for that one. Dustin, can I get your thoughts on Paratici's return, but also your thoughts on his time at the club previously as sporting director? What do you make of the job that he'd done?
I think one of the things that Paratici brings, other than some of the best windows and signings of recent memory, right? So if you look at the first team, when everyone's fit, he would have signed Romero, Kulusevski, Bentancur, Porro, Spence, Udogi, Sa. That's a huge amount of players that make up, if not the majority of our first team, they're at least squad players that are regularly rotated in. I think the other part that he brought to the club that was different from how we had been running previously was, it looked kind of chaotic, right? The number of players that we were linked to, but it also meant that Raya signed, we'll go for Vicario. Whenever we missed out on a target, we would move on immediately. In fact, we wouldn't move on immediately. Simultaneously, there would be other options in the fire that would just be pulled out. So I think that the benefit of that approach is that, debacles like the Eze signing or the Morgan Gibbs-White signing, they wouldn't have affected us as badly if he was at the helm. Because you're like, Morgan Gibbs-White is out, Xavi's here, whoever else there is. It would feel less stasis in the window, where we're waiting weeks for a transfer to move and it doesn't move, and then we've missed out on that time that the player could have been with the squad training in preseason. So I think that while his approach looks quite chaotic and it's pretty stressful for people that follow the transfer window, I think that it also has the benefit of teams don't get to dick us around on the price as much because they know with Paratici, if you try to play hardball with him, he's got another 5 or 6 signings in his back pocket that he'll move on to.
That's a very good point, actually, Dustin. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
I think
As
he
long
negotiates multiple deals. He negotiates multiple deals at once, doesn't he? And then sees which is the one that's more likely to get over the line. And I think he maybe puts him in a priority order, which is that's football. That's Football Manager 101, right? You get two players on the hook, and then you at the last minute you pick the right ones.
Sorry to interrupt. I was going to add one more thing. As long as we don't get him to sign managers, and I'm glad that Gabonini is also back in the picture because of him.
That's another good shout. Thank you, Dustin. There's some good points made there, and thank you, Gary, for chipping in as well. Martin, can I come back to you? Let's shift to Johan Lange then. In your eyes, did he deserve that promotion? No, it's not necessarily our job as fans to say, "Oh, you shouldn't have got that. You should have got that." But how do you view it for you and the job that he's done so far?
I think that when he first came in to Tottenham Hotspur, I feel like that was the job that he was going to have assigned. So the academy and the scouting and the performance department, which he now has. That's how he operated in, if I'm not wrong, Denmark, and also at his loan spell at Aston Villa, and even actually at Wolves. So if we look at Aston Villa, he was the one that brought in Ollie Watkins, Matty Cash, and also Emiliano Martinez. So I think that he's much more powerful in this role that he has now than the one that he had prior. And I think that Paratici is much better in the role that he has now assigned, that he's taken on from Lange. So I think this is a also deserved promotion because Lange has pulled in some, good signings, let's say in the summer. But I feel like this is his strongest aspect. So not so much a promotion as a well-assigned job now.
Okay, that's a good way of putting it. I like that. Thank you very much. Gary, can I come to you again on Johan Lange and your reaction to this promotion? Did you expect it knowing, we didn't know that Paratici returned, but when you saw the announcement that Paratici had returned, did you expect Johan Lange's position to change?
I think it probably naturally has to. I think they're kind of saying it's co-sporting directors, aren't they? So then, as I put in the video, which I thought was, again, really well done, and credit to him for sort of the way he's coming out with things at the moment. But as he explained it there, there's such a large area for one person to do it. It makes sense to have multiple people doing that. And as Martin said, the right people are in the right positions now, looking after the right things. I would much more be comfortable with Paratici's identifying first-team players than I would Johan Lange. But again, I'd probably be more happy with him looking after the analysis side than I would Fabio. So I think it's a match made in heaven. The only thing I picked up on this is when I was watching the video, Johan Lange didn't look very happy. Every time I think it was Ben, the presenter, kept saying to him, "You've got promotion." He didn't look happy. And I don't know if that's because he didn't want to be on camera, and he is kind of someone that's sort of stood at back. And you can see Fabio Paratici is much more charismatic and likes to be on the camera. And maybe it's that, but he didn't look very happy. And that's just in the back of my mind that, was he really happy that this has happened? I'm not sure. But I kept picking up on the body language quite a lot in that video.
That's a really interesting point, actually, because I didn't pick that up. I picked it up that he wasn't as confident or bubbly, maybe, than Paratici, but that's an interesting point.
He wasn't at all. He didn't look happy. And even when they came to him to talk, at first it was a bit, thanks for telling I've got a promotion. And he sort of warmed into the answering the questions. And he actually answered 2 questions with the same answer. And I thought, there's obviously been coached here, which obviously has been produced, but he just didn't look happy to me. So, I'm hopefully it works out okay. But if in 6 months' time he's no longer at the club, I think we can go back to that video and sort of see potential.
Interesting. Yeah, we've got to come back to this.
I'm I'm not trying to feed cheap stereotypes here, but the Scandinavian guy is not not confident speaking publicly, while the Italian guy's like, so I don't know whether it's got anything to do with that. I think what's interesting about this kind of dual role is whether there's overlap and whether there's a power struggle there. I think the delineation of what Paratici is good at, which is signing senior players, signing first team players, wheeling and dealing, I think he's ideal for that role more so than Lange. I think what Lange was showed that he was really good at was getting deals over the line under the radar without us even realizing it, and being in charge of data. I think that also aligns with trying to find young talent, right? Because that's not really something I would necessarily expect Paratici to do well. It'll be context for him, as opposed to with young players, kind of like data sometimes helps you sift through that, because there's a lot less access to being able to see them or being able to scout them, especially you have to cast a much wider net. So it just seems to fit. I think the only problem is whether there will be some kind of a power struggle, but I think that previously all the staff we've had in these roles have always been kind of perfunctory, because we know that Daniel Levy just micromanages it to the point that that's their title in name, but it's Daniel Levy over their shoulder, popping into the office like like he would with Mourinho, saying, "So what's happening with the squad now?" and let me feel like a football man. So I think that having these people in place hopefully means that Vinay Venkatesham is putting the people in the place, because he's not going to be micromanaging all of that, and it's properly allocating resources to the right people for the job.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Dustin. That's interesting. Can I stick with you, actually, Dustin, and ask you whether you think Aston Villa's recruitment has been better or worse since Johan Lange's left them? Because it's been a topic of conversation among Spurs fans for quite a while now.
I haven't really kept up to date with that, but I would say that there does seem to be some stasis there. Like Morgan Rogers is probably the only player I can think of that Aston Villa has where I go, I wish I had that player. But with most of the players that you would take note of in Aston Villa, they have been there for a while. And other than Morgan Rogers, I can't think of any player from Villa necessarily that I would want. So
Okay.
I that might be the case.
Thank you, Dustin. Can I come back to you, Gary, and ask you about this in terms of Johan Lange, the job he'd done at Villa? How do you view it now, looking back, but also how Villa have done without Lange? Because in this window, for example, they signed Harvey Elliott and Jadon Sancho, but they seem to leave their business really late.
I think it's a natural thing, really, that a lot of these clubs are leaving a bit late. I think that Villa have traditionally done that anyway, and I know they've struggled slightly with PSR, so I think you have to take that into consideration as well. I think Dustin's, correct in, if you look at the team, there are a number of very, very good football players there. Whether they improve our first team, I'm not so sure. There's probably a couple that I think, yes. I don't know a huge amount about Aston Villa in terms of how the club is run. I can see from the outside. I know there's been a lot of PSR issues. I think we have to kind of take that into consideration as well. And that's the great thing about Tottenham. And I know we probably want to move on from Daniel Levy, but we never got ourselves in a PSR issue. And I don't think we ever will, because I think Vinay seems very similar to Daniel in terms of his particular, but I think he's very comfortable putting the right people in the right places. And I've used the term before of, you employ intelligent people for them to tell you how to do the job. You don't employ intelligent people for you to tell them how to do the job. You're there to set the expectations and lead it, not dictate it. And I think that he's more of a leader than a dictator, from what I've seen so far. Obviously, it's early days. He's been doing it for like 3 months, or a month. It's been a month, over 5 weeks. So let's give some grace. But yeah, I think PSR is playing a big part in Villa. They've spent a lot of money. They've spent a lot of money on not only transfers but wages, and they went all in to make sure they were Champions League, and they've failed to continuously be there, and that catches up with you. Whereas on the flip side, for us, we've consistently been in that Champions League for a long period of time, but we wouldn't break that bracket to branch out. So we're kind of like two ends of the spectrum a little bit here.
Yeah, yes, when you think about it, I think that new stadium is so important that we've got, isn't it, to bring that money and avoid any trouble and just allowing us that flexibility to spend. Maybe it's a route that Villa could take. Having said that, Villa Park, of course, being historic. But thank you, Gary, for that one. So I'll come to Vinay's interview in just a little bit, which Gary did reference. I think that's really important to discuss. But Martin, first, for you, is it right to have two sporting directors? I know this is a question that probably is difficult to answer until we see how they get on, but how do you feel about that approach? Because I can't think of many clubs, and I could be wrong about this, at the top of my head, that have two sporting directors. I think Chelsea are one of them.
Yeah. Sorry, I accidentally muted myself again. Yeah,
Sorry?
I didn't even know Chelsea had two sporting directors. So for me, it was something completely new. The reason I'm quite confident in this is, like Gary mentioned, that Johan Lange didn't seem, let's say, happy with his promotion. I sort of observed his body language as well, but I was persuading myself in my head that he's very professional, and this is the way he reacts or speaks to the media. So this is in my head that he's very professional. So that's also to your point, to your question, is I believe that this could function well, because I feel like Johan Lange has that professionalism about himself, that he isn't a type that his ego will get in the way. And Paratici will probably have the sort of upper hand in the, let's say, transfers, and Johan Lange will have the upper hand in the sort of performance analysis and the academy analysis. So I feel like having two sporting directors in the way we set out to have them is a good idea, because I think that we have two really, really good people allocated to really, really good jobs, and they can sort of move us a level above if we just had one person for this amount of roles. So I hope it can work. Obviously, like we mentioned, we have no actual background knowledge if it actually does work in different clubs, because like I said, I don't even know that Chelsea had two sporting directors. So I'm persuaded it can work, and we have the two correct people for it.
I personally feel the same. So no, I appreciate you on that one, Martin. Gary, come back to you for a brief second. At this current moment, do you like this split of roles? Also, we spoke about how it's going to look. Do you think overall this seems sensible at this moment? Because Vinay mentions how kind of broad and how big that kind of whole department is of being a sporting director. So when he explains it, it kind of feels right to have more than one person do it, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, I think the more that originally I wasn't too sure, but then when I sat and thought about it and saw the roles or the responsibilities, kind of thought actually this makes sense. And then listening more to Vinay and his explanation in it, it made me think actually, this is quite sensible. This is a really broad role for one person, and one person isn't going to be perfect for all of that, and it might need one or two people. And I think Johan Lange, I think that probably he was just uncomfortable as much on camera than anything, hopefully. But it's definitely been put in the right position. And then Fabio Paratici is, he's nicknamed the Don by the Tottenham fans, right? So everybody loves him. He's always on his phone. He's got that, his iPhone wire hanging out. You can get wireless earphones nowadays, so I'm not sure why he's constantly got this wire hanging out of his suit jacket, but that's just a great image of him. And I think that he's definitely in the right position for that. And I think that takes a little bit of pressure off of Johan. He can continue to work in the shadows, as Daniel Levy also like to do, but we've got someone that's out there as well. So I think it's a good idea that there's only one other club, Chelsea, doing it. So, and they ain't doing too bad on ins and outs and the way they're handling their transfer policies. They buy low, they sell high. Nicholas Jackson bought him 40, 50 million, probably going to sell him for 70 to Bayern Munich. So if we're doing similar things and we're constantly improving our squad, that's great. But I think there definitely needs to be a good focus on the youth team, which there seems to be, because there's a number of youth players that are looking very, very good. And I like the idea that Johan Lange is in charge of that, because he seems to be able to identify younger players, as we've seen with, Lucas Bergwijn, for instance, whereas Paratici is bringing in more well-established people. There's a quick list of people I've just found while you were talking: Romero, Pedro Porro, Pat Matassar, Kulichevsky, Jed Spence, Destiny Dogie, Charlison, Bentancur, Basuma, Perisic, Fraser Forster, Emerson Royale, Clement Longley, Arnaud Danjuma, Brian Hill. And they're all pretty established players in their clubs. They're not, Brian Hill may be the exception there, and Jed Spence had a fantastic season. If you're watching English football anyway, you're going to know him. So he's going for players that are immediately able to improve us, whereas Johan Lange was also looking at future. So we've got a nice balance there to answer a really long answer for a short question.
No, it's a good answer, detailed. I want to unpick that slightly. Thank you, Gary, for that. It was interesting. And I mean, a lot of complaints or frustration among Spurs fans has been that we're neglecting the first team in the last few years and just focusing about the future. And while the future is important, Lange will do that, and you hope and Paratici can focus on the first team. But it's interesting you mentioned about Paratici, with his kind of passion and, earphones hanging out, etc. I'll never forget when I was treated by my family to a ton of club experience on my birthday, and Paratici was sitting in front of me, but it was a decision that went against us, and you should have seen his reaction, and whatever he had in his hand was thrown on the floor, and the player in front of him had completely leaped out his seat, and it just it's funny, he spent more time standing up, and I think Conte, I believe, was a manager at the time, and he had to control him sometimes. He turned around at one point and went, whoa, calm down. I mean, you could understand the word he's saying, but you could just tell it's just like, calm it down a bit. It's just a passion. It's great.
Well, that's the passion we want. And you look at when he signed, the statement put out: delighted to return to the club that I love.
It's good.
That's it. He could have gone anywhere.
Maybe he's got the wired earphones because he doesn't want Fabrizio Romano spying on him on Bluetooth.
This is true.
Maybe. There's not a bad shout, that. We'll go with that. Good shout. Dustin, can I come to you before we move on from this whole discussion and move on to our next talking point? I want to unpick Vinay's interview slightly, because Gary did mention it and he makes a good point. How do you think that Vinay come across in this interview? Because he seems to be also doing a lot more interviews, not just him, but everyone in kind of a higher position at Tottenham. Is that something that's really refreshing to see, and maybe we've missed under Levy and etc. in the past?
I think it's an area where the club has determined that they could do a lot better in, primarily because when Levy was in charge, he would give an interview and he would just infuriate people even more. So I think that the club is aware that we should be communicating more on social media. We should communicate more to everyone. And Paratici did give a few interviews with his headphones in a dark room, not very polished at all. And Levy would be doing it at the Cambridge Club and places like that. So it didn't improve his image of not being in touch with the common fan when you're charging the highest ticket prices in England, and you're talking about it at the Cambridge Club, and you're talking about the business aspects of it. Even the interview that he had with Vinay, let's talk about red wine because it makes me likable and relatable to the fan. That's not quite the demographic. So I think that the club knows that they need to communicate better, but the person that they had as the main communicator was not self-aware enough to connect to the common fan and to make us feel like you understand what we're going through. You don't, because you have the concession thing, you have the fan thing, you have furloughing staff during COVID, and all these decisions that they may be justifiable from a business point of view, but you have a figurehead that is kind of tone deaf as to how to communicate it in an empathetic manner. So I think that leveraging on having figureheads at the staff that are now better at connecting to people and not coming across as Dr. Evil style evil billionaires probably means that the club realizes that they have the communication gap that they've had with the fans is something that can be closed now, because we haven't really had an era since the Pochettino era when, last season at White Hart Lane, that was like one of the most perfect seasons where went unbeaten at home. We closed White Hart Lane. There was, the video of Poch looking at the screen, almost in tears. That was when the fans, the club, the board felt the most unified, and we haven't had that kind of unity since, because of what's happened in the boardroom and fans feeling marginalized or feeling like you're just customers as opposed to the lifeblood of the club.
Well put again, Dustin. Appreciate that. A lot of people share that opinion. Thank you. Let's move on then to our Aston Villa preview, because, as I said in the intro, international break is now over and Tottenham are back in action this weekend in the Premier League. So let's go to the panel and get the thoughts ahead of it. Gary, we'll come back round to you. How are you feeling ahead of this one? I heard a little bit what you were saying in the green room, should I say, before. Are you feeling confident?
Yeah, very much so. I've been liking the way that we're playing. Very happy with this. Most of the setup. I'll probably say the front three or front four is still balanced, is slightly out, but I think that will definitely improve as players get used to the physicality of the league. In terms of Javi Simmons, I think Mohamed Kudus has hit the ground running, but he's had 2 years head start. Hopefully, Kolo Muani's longest, the world record, Guinness Book of World Records for a dead leg is over, and that he's back. But I think we're definitely looking good. I was really pleased with the performance against Leeds. I think we would have lost that last season. The way things were going, I think that we would definitely have lost that. We're showing good character. And then, Martin brought a good point up in that green room that Villa have only scored one away goal in the Premier League this season. So that's encouraging. But again, equally, we did nearly lose to Wolves, who hadn't got a point. So if anyone is going to do a Spurs, it is Spurs, and potentially this could happen on Sunday. But I am going in quite confident with our recent performances. You look at the history of head-to-head, it's we win, they win, we win, they win. It's kind of back and forth. Historically, it's always been a game that we win. Looking at sort of football in the Premier League, we've won 19 games, they've won 7, but in the last couple of seasons, it's been a bit back and forth. So confident as I am as ever with Thomas Frank. As I said before, the four of us on here obviously live and breathe Tottenham. If we can't predict his lineups, then I'm not too sure how an opponent can either. And we live and breathe this every minute of the day. So it's that's a great thing to have as well in your back pocket. That actually, I'm not even sure what this lineup's going to look like.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know how he's going to set up, and there are bad sides to that. Don't get me wrong. Bournemouth maybe it gets it wrong, but generally, it's a good coach, isn't he? He goes about it. It's slightly different system, different players every game. Whereas with Ange, you knew how to play him. It's a case of could you beat him? And unfortunately, last season there was a lot of times where it was by how much by, rather than are you going to win at all? But no, good point, Gary.
I think at the beginning of Ange, it was like, oh my God, how the heck do we deal with this? But these coaches are elite. They're elite level. They you look at Guardiola, like nearly lost his family because he's so obsessed with staying in a room, working on tactics. They're going to figure out within 6 or 7 weeks that the fullbacks just tuck in here and we just knock one over the top or get into the channels and we're in. And a good coach will counteract that. And that's what I think we've got. We've got one that will understand the people he's playing, which he's obviously already said that I will go in and make changes against whoever it is I'm playing against. And that's a really good thing. I like that his tactical adaptability that he has is perfect. And I'm a big fan of what he's doing at the moment.
If you don't mind me adding on to that, I think a big part of it as well is that with a lot of teams in Premier League, it's also that they've got a lot of analysts that are able to analyze the game. They'll have they've edited something for the player to look at halftime and all of that. I think the benefit of it is that when it's in the coach can take all that information in and holistically kind of give them the update of what they should be adapting to. Whereas coaches that are too reliant on analysts to do the individual analysis, you can't just do that during a game. You can't you can't watch the game, get information from analysts, and then figure out what you're gonna do holistically. So I think what's useful for Thomas Frank is that he was probably doing a lot of that earlier in Brøndby and in Brentford. And therefore he doesn't rely as much on his backroom staff in order to be able to do the on the ball kind of adaptations to what's happening in the game during with the changing game state. So where his adaptability really comes to the fore is when he looks at things and goes, okay, I'm going to make this tactical shift, and he also has the overall holistic game state in mind, so that he doesn't just do the analyst blinders on, I'm only fixing this thing. He can also do that in combination with holistically looking at what that would do to the rest of the team shape.
Okay, that's an interesting point there. Thank you, Dustin. Very sensible outlook.
That's a really good point,
Interesting.
Dustin.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So yeah, I think a lot of people listening will appreciate that little bit of detail, a little bit of analysis. So thank you, Dustin, for that. Martin, can I come to you with your thoughts in particular on this game, Villa, on Sunday? Are you like Gary and you're confident at this moment in time?
I'm a little less confident than Gary, maybe because I'm a Spurs fan and it's just the trauma's just embedded in my personality.
Trust me, I've been a longer Spurs fan than you.
Yeah. So it's also last season, like, or just not last season, I would say the past 5-6 seasons, it's you don't know what to predict. But definitely getting used to Thomas Frank and that stability that he brings. So yeah, every time I actually realise Thomas Frank is our coach, I feel slightly more confident than, let's say, a different coach would be at the helm of our club. To add to that point, just the only thing that bugs me is Aston Villa have started to get on form. They started to get wins under their belt. Unai Emery sort of getting the system ticking that he wasn't at the start of the season. I mean, they couldn't score a goal in 5-6 games. They, I think, held a record of top 5 English leagues that a team hasn't actually scored a goal. So looking into this game, I would say that slightly less confident looking at Aston Villa's recent performances. But like Gary mentioned, that they've actually only scored 1 goal away from home in the Premier League this season. So that certainly brings some confidence in. And finally, it's a first sort of big team that comes to our stadium under Thomas Frank. So the crowd will be much louder, much more behind the team, I would say, than, let's say, a Wolverhampton or a Bournemouth. It usually feels like it when we're playing Aston Villa, the fans actually put in a really good performance compared to other teams that come around. So finally, we'll see a sort of push from the fans as well, I think, personally. Depends how we start the game as well. So I'll be more confident if in the first 20 minutes we actually look like we're up for it and we're ready to get the 3 points.
Okay, that's sensible. Thank you, Martin. Thank you for that one. Dustin, how are you feeling of the game? You go with Gary, you're really confident. With Martin, you'd be confident, but it depends on what happens in the game, taking a more cautious outlook. Where are you at the moment?
I'm going to push back on Martin, which is Aston Villa's form getting better makes me feel better about it, because I'll feel a lot worse if we're playing a team that's bottom of the league, hasn't got a win, because Dr. Tottenham will see you now. So I feel much happier about playing a team in form than a team that can't buy a win, because those are the teams that we always seem to give points to. That said, I think that there are a number of things that affect Villa's form coming into the game with us. One is I don't know if Watkins is injured. He was withdrawn from the England game. I don't know whether he's going to recover in time. If that happens, that's a big loss for them. Marlon is on form, but Marlon isn't a striker. He's a second striker, false 9. So can he play as the focal point up front? Without Watkins, who do they have for him to play off? So I think that they will struggle if Watkins is out. And even if Watkins isn't, he's not 100% fit. So I think that maybe a clean sheet is on the cards. Tielemans and Mings are out as well. So then, defensively and, one of their playmakers is out. So I think that from an injury perspective, they have a key player out, which is Watkins. So Kamara and Paulinho in midfield will probably be one of the key battles as well. If Paulinho can snuff out the midfield creativity or the ball carrying, then I don't see Villa giving us much of a problem as long as we don't concede silly goals.
Hopefully not. Yeah, we don't want that, like Brighton, a good performance, but as Frank's own words, 2 silly goals to concede 2 individual errors. But on Aston Villa, I believe they're unbeaten in 7 games coming into this and they've won their last 4. And there tends to be a picture painted by the media, but also just the football world and all pundits and just anything in general, that Villa are on this kind of downward spiral and they're had this atrocious start. And I think it's a slow start, but in my opinion, they've really turned a corner, and 7 games unbeaten is not bad at all. But I think a couple of you mentioned it now, and you're spot on. I think you said, was it 1 goal away from home? I didn't know that in the Premier League this season. What I do know is their record in London is atrocious, and that goes beyond just this season. They've said we've spoke to about 3 or 4 Villa fans now on the channel for this game, and they're all said the same thing, that they're worried because of their record in London. But at Tottenham Stadium, their record is a little bit better, but in London in general, they don't seem to travel well to the capital. But I have to see how this one goes. But it's lots of stats you could look into, but all that matters at the end of the day is the performance from both sides and ultimately the result. But Martin, I'll come back to you because I do want to touch on our opponent, Aston Villa. What have you made on their starts of the season? Because there is a lot of draws in there.
Definitely a lot of draws, and a lot of draws that could have been defeats. I've watched almost all their games this season, and they just seem so slow going forward. They used to be a really good counter-attacking team under Unai Emery. And even like Dustin mentioned, that Ollie Watkins might actually not be available for our fixture. I believe he will play. I think that it was just a precautionary measure of him being pulled out. But he's actually struggled with form. I don't think he's actually got a goal under his belt, certainly not in the Premier League this season. And he actually missed a penalty as well against Feyenoord in the Europa League. So he's off confidence, which I'd say, again, like a Tottenham fan, is bad news, because Dr. Tottenham comes in and suddenly he pops a goal in. But hopefully that won't happen. I haven't been impressed with Aston Villa. I think defensively they look shaky at the start as well, which used to be a massive weapon of Unai Emery's, that they conceded very little goals. Even against Burnley in their last Premier League fixture, they were actually under pressure for the last 20 minutes, actually just about scraping the 2-1 victory. So they haven't looked good defensively. They haven't looked offensively. I think that they're really missing a Yuri Tielemans in that number 6 role that actually calms them down properly and make sure that the passes and the tempo of the game are being dictated by Villa. And going forward, Doniel or Marlon, even in this international break, has been quite on fire, like Dustin already mentioned. But apart from that, I mean, even their new signings, Harvey Elliott can't get in the team. Jadon Sancho can't get in the team. I've not been impressed by them. And like you mentioned, though, Harry, that they haven't lost in their last 7 games. But their performances haven't been as good at all.
Thank you very much. Gary, can I also ask you about Aston Villa, but in particular about Unai Emery? Do you feel that in his career, managerial career this is, that he seems to be able to only get a team to a certain point before they almost flatten out, they stagnate? I'm talking about Arsenal, Villarreal. So I suppose you could argue that Seville does break that trend a little bit. So I suppose the bigger question is, what can Unai Emery do with Aston Villa this season? And are you concerned about, their form and the fact that he, his previous managerial record, that it does kind of go nowhere in the end?
Yeah, he's done well. I think when he first came in, he was done extremely well. You go back to the original point, or the point that we made about when they lost Johan Lange, that I think the need to sell players for financial fair play is costing them as well. And I think the need for them to move people on and bring people in, and they're bringing people in, no disrespect for like Rashford or Jadon Sancho, that are kind of like in this weird vortex, I guess, of they're not really a player at the club they are. They're kind of being bashed out of the door, pushed away. We don't want you. They're not playing, and that takes time for them to fit back in, and they're not going to hit the ground running. And so they've had the clubs. It's a strange one to analyse when I don't spend most of my day looking up Aston Villa stuff. So I can only go and watch match of the day or watch them when they're on the TV and know when they play Tottenham. You know, I'm always slightly concerned because it is Tottenham, and it's just not because of who we're playing, but because we could turn up and absolutely turn them over, or we could not turn up at all. As we saw against Wolves. I mean, I sat there and I thought, what am I watching? Like, where has this come from? And then we should be turning a team over. So I'm not saying that Villa are someone that we should be doing that to. When you look at the last sort of 6 games at home in the Premier League against them, it's 3-3. We've won 3, they've won 3. So it's going to be a difficult game. And they're hitting form as Martin alluded to. You know, they haven't lost now. They've won the last 4, and then they've drew the 3 previous to that. But just to echo points I raised before, we're 3rd in the league, with 4 points in the Champions League. We're in the next round of the Carabao Cup. We've lost 1 game in 10 this season. We're unbeaten in 7. We've got 5 clean sheets. Our defence and set pieces have massively improved. And Villa have scored 1 goal from a set piece this season. So out of the 6 they have scored in the Premier League. So I'm confident. But again, you just don't know what Tottenham is going to turn up, and that's a difficult situation while we're still getting into that Thomas Frank era.
It is so true. Do you think, though, Gary, that we are losing or can lose or have lost, whatever your opinion is, the whole Spursy tag?
I think we've got a long way to go with a lot of people for that to happen. Because, and if I just take the Wolves game, I hadn't got a point all season. Then they were beating us till the 93rd minute. I made a joke with my brother because he had left the stadium. And he was at a different part of the stadium that we'd won, and he was like, "Shut up!" I was like, "No, we've scored though." You know what I mean? And to me, that still is what we're there. We're not out of that. I've never used the tag myself. It's just this is how I've seen us play for so long. Unfortunately, the last time I never really felt that was under Pochettino, and I could spend the next 2 hours talking about how he should never have been sacked. But we are where we are. Just by winning the Europa League doesn't paper over massive issues that we have, because we lost 22 league games last season. We should have been relegated, really. To be frank about it, we should have been. So no, I don't think that tag's necessarily gone. But if we can finish in the top 6 of the season and advance well into the latter rounds of all the cups, and if we can get to a final in the Carabao, the FA Cup, then yeah, I think that tag slightly goes for external people. But I think it always creep up when we put performances in like we did against Wolves, for instance. I mean, look at Tamworth again last season. It's non-league. I've played at that standard myself. It's
crazy. Yeah, we had really hard work at that, didn't we? And just some of them were what? One was a part-time builder going in the next day to work and all that kind of thing. And just like, really, Tottenham, you leave it right that late. Hey ho, Tottenham style. But
and that went long ago. That's not even a year ago, by the way. It's not even a year ago. So we won the Europa League, but let's just keep improving, improving. I think Thomas Frank's the perfect guy to do that.
I personally totally agree with that. Thank you, Gary. Dustin, then, let's talk predicted lineup. What do you think Thomas Frank will go with? Gary makes a really good point, I think, that Frank is really unpredictable, and that's a good thing in a way. What do you think he will go with against Villa on Sunday?
You make the good point that it's hard to predict. Personally, I think that he may rotate in Jet Spence, although Jet Spence has played a lot with England, but Marlon is clearly the most dangerous player that Villa have, if unless Watkins is fit. So another one for the penitentiary. Jet Spence should lock Marlon up and throw away the key. So I think that Jet Spence being our best one-on-one defender should be on the wing that Marlon is on. You might want Paulinho as well to snuff out threats in midfield of Kamara. Other than that, what I'm concerned with is actually chance creation, and in particular, if we still don't have a first choice striker or dedicated striker back in, we have Richarlison, but since the game where he scored a brace, he hasn't quite hit the heights since. So I think that the issue we have is that we don't have the chance creation that we need to put Villa away easily. We might win, but it feels like, I'm not sure if the goals are coming from Richarlison. It feels like it would more be a midfielder crashing the box, an own goal or something like that. Kudus definitely needs to start. And I think the issue is that if Paulinho starts, should Paulinho and Bentancur play in the same midfield, just because you need more mobility, you need a person that can take the ball on the turn and penetrate through midfield. And I feel like if you have Paulinho and Bentancur, the Bentancur of old would have taken ball and carried, but since his injury, I don't feel like he has that in him anymore. So it almost feels like we're kind of limited by the archetype of midfield that we have, that if we have two that don't progress the ball, then we are relying a lot on Kudus and Xavi for all our penetration, and that's where there are concerns with like what the midfield composition is. I think the midfield composition, whether we play with Paulinho and Bentancur or and Xavi, or whether we switch out Bergvall instead, and we have Bergvall, then I think we have a better chance of creating something through the centre.
Okay, that's a good point. Thank you. I think midfield battle is very key in that one. Even if you don't, follow both sides closely, I think it's very fair to say that the game could be won in midfield. But a fan mentioned to me today about how they're worried about, let's say, whether it be Porro or Doggy. They think it'd be Porro or Doggy because the minutes that Spencer's played in the international break. They said they worry about how they deal with them bombing forward if Villa have got injuries and like Marlon can't play on the right, he has to play down the middle, and you've got others tracking back. So it's interesting, but midfield battle definitely one to watch. But Martin, what do you think Thomas Frank will go with from a lineup point of view, 1 to 11?
I think it'll be unchanged of what it was with Leeds. So I think that it will be Udogie at left back. Definitely Jet Spence is our best one-on-one defender in the fullback position, but I genuinely feel like Udogie, especially this season, has been fantastic defensively. Against Brighton, he kept out Minter on multiple occasions, and Minter this season one-on-one has been amazing. So I think Udogie keeps his spot, and I think Matisse Tell will start up front. Because we have a midweek Champions League game, so I think Richarlison will start against Monaco then. And yeah, Xavi Simons has probably cemented his the number 10 role, because I think that he showed really, really good signs and sparks against Leeds. And Wilson Odobert will be probably, in my opinion, the left winger that will most likely be chosen this season. I think that he's sort of growing in performances since that Doncaster Rovers game, and although very slow steps, but he's certainly getting more confident. So I think that it will be unchanged from Leeds.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you, Martin, for that one. We have to see what the lineup will be. Gary, what do you think Thomas Frank will go with? You say he's unpredictable. Can you predict him in this case?
I'll try, but I'm not sure I'll get it right. I feel that Jet Spence will probably play. He done well for England in the positions he was in. I just prefer Doggy at left back just for the balance of things going forward, especially if we've got another player out on the left that cuts in be that Odegaard or Simmons, for instance. So I like the fact that Udogie's there to give us some actual natural width. I don't see Pedro Porro stepping out. I think he's one of our best players. I'm a big supporter of his. So reluctantly, probably will say that back five will be unchanged. Helenio will definitely play. I think he will play against these type of teams. When we play against lesser teams, quote unquote, he'll probably step out. And then in there, I think it's a toss-up really between Bentancur and Sarr. Sarr's probably the one there. I'd like to see Simmons stay in the 10, but I've got a feeling he might be pushed out wide again. Odegaard played well against Leeds, didn't pull up any ground. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Richarlison out on the left and keep Matisse Tell through the middle. I just think Richarlison's a better left-sided player than he is a striker. So I'd like to see Kolo Muani, but I don't think he's going to start. So I think it'll be maybe one or two changes, 2 or 3. I think the back five stays the same though.
Okay, thank you. Can I get your predicted score and scorers, starting with you, Gary?
I'm going to go 2-1. I think Marlon will probably score. And I would love to see Tell score again, as I think the lad needs more confidence. He's doing great for the under-21s in France. I think we forget that he is only 20 years old. And I'd love to see a Simmons goal. I'm a big fan of his, and I'd love to see that at the side that I'm sitting at so I can see them celebrate. So 2-1 win for me.
That'd be nice. Fingers crossed. Thank you, Gary. Good to kick us off with a win. Martin, give us your score prediction and your scorers, please.
Yeah, I'm going similar to Gary, so I'm going to say 2-0, and I'll say Xavi Simmons and Matisse Tell will guide us to victory.
Nice, love that. I mean, Matisse Tell and Wilson Odegaard doing very well for France under-21s on international duty. Hopefully they can continue that with Tottenham. But Gary's absolutely right. That both, he mentions Tell, but they're both young. Give them time and back them while they wear the shirt. Even if they're not perfect or you didn't want them, just give them time, get behind them. But Dustin, what is your score prediction and also your scorers, please?
Score prediction, I think it'll be 1-0. I think it'll be a grueling game. I think that they're going to try to just keep us tight. What I do see is I think it'll be a box crashing midfielder that scores, just because they're going to play in a low block against us, and it would be kind of like Xavi pulling the strings and creating space for someone. So probably someone like Sarr scoring from just outside the box. Okay,
that's not a bad shout actually, because Villa, there's a huge possibility they do sit back. I mean, John McGinn always does worry me. I mean, sounds crazy, but just in terms of that midfield battle, it just seems to be very strong, very physical. So something Tottenham will have to watch out for. But the last topic, third and final for this podcast today, is Tottenham's next 7 games. So I'm going to read them all out firstly, then we're going to just say how we feel generally and get into some score predictions. The reason I picked this is because it gets tough for Tottenham. I'm going to be totally honest with you and frank here. So Tottenham face 7 games. I say it's 7 obstacles in the next 20 days before the next international break in November. So the following fixtures for Tottenham are the 7. Aston Villa at home in the Premier League. AS Monaco away in the Champions League. Everton away in the Premier League. Newcastle away in the Carabao Cup. Chelsea at home in the Premier League. Copenhagen at home in the Champions League. And Manchester United at home in the Premier League. I repeat, that's Villa at home, Monaco away, Everton away, Newcastle away, Chelsea at home, Copenhagen at home, and Manchester United at home. That's across 3 different competitions. Gary, can I start with you? I mean, you're shaking your head there. Thoughts on this run? I mean, tough? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I was looking at that, but I was looking at 2 fixtures after, which is away at Arsenal, away at PSG. So they don't get any easier after that either. So
no.
But I remember once the team I used to manage, we won the treble, so we won everything, right? And someone said to me once, "Oh, well, you had an easy run," and I thought, well, I can only win against the teams that I've got to play against. And this is the same thing. It's going to be hard for everybody. You can only win or make a performance against the teams you've got to play against. We've all got to play against the same people in the Premier League. Okay, the Champions League slightly different. We've all got to play them. It's not great having to play such tough games in a row, but we've just got to get through it. And I think this is where we see Thomas Frank now. And we're going to see whether he can step up to a level where he's needing to do the Premier League and the Champions League, because he hasn't done that before. So I think now we're going to see whether he's got it ready, got the team ready, got the coaches are ready for it. Because it's going to be a real tough period, and that's not even going into January. We're not even in January yet. So if we've got to go with what we've got available, and hopefully Solanke, Kalamani, Dragic, everybody's available. I think Ben Davis came off injured for Wales, so everybody needs to be ready. Everybody needs to be fit, and there's going to be a lot of minutes for a lot of people coming up. And I think now we're going to see over this October to December. I think after the Arsenal PSG game, we got Fulham. That's the last game in November. So October and November, I think we're really going to see how well prepared Thomas Frank is.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, Gary. Dustin, can I get your thoughts on these next 7, but also expanding on Gary's point? How important for you is rotation in these next 7 games and beyond that, as Gary mentions, which is, I think he said Arsenal, PSG, etc. after the international break? Because a lot of fans look at teams and go, oh, he's been dropped, or he's fallen out with the manager, or he's out of favour. But rotation is critical, isn't it, in these periods?
After the last 2 seasons we've had, rotation is our lifeblood, because that's how we end up with, playing our third choice keeper, having to desperately sign Kinski, playing, Jet Spence and what was it, Archie Gray as centre backs at one point. So rotation is key. And I think part of it is that Thomas Frank has started the season rotating all the way. So part of why we can't tell who his first 11 is because the concept of first 11 doesn't exist. It's a team game. You've got maybe a core team of 16 or 17 players that you rotate, and it's to keep them fresh, but it's also so that you never have a person that's out of the first team for so long that when you rotate him, then he's dislocated and has no relationships with the other players. So I think rotation is key to surviving periods like this. For the games that we have coming up, I think Monaco will be full strength because they're playing Angers and Toulouse. After Toulouse is maybe only three places below them in the league, so tough game, but I still do think that Monaco will take the game seriously. I think for all of the games we kind of will be playing a full strength team more or less, except for Chelsea, because just after us they'll play Karabakh away, so that's a long trip for them, and Chelsea will likely rotate for that game. So I think that rotating shouldn't be an issue, and I think that given the strength of English sides against other teams, the TV money really has done something to the English league, where you have mid-table EPL teams can take players off Milan or all of that. So I'm not going to say that the Champions League is easy, but we will be playing against teams that we can, most English teams would be able to buy the best player of the Champions League team they're playing against, unless it's a Barcelona, Madrid, Dortmund or whatever. So not to say that they're easy games, because they can still beat us, but I think that we can rotate to some level, not to the extent that we did for the Europa League, but we still would be able to rotate, get some players rest, and still get a result. It's actually the league games that I worry a lot more about.
Interesting point, that. No. And I mean, priorities are tough, and that's where it's going to really be interesting. The club's aim of competing, which I'm assuming still stands, of competing on all 4 fronts. Certainly sustained success does do, but that run is where things are tested. I think fans' patience will be tested, rotation will be tested, and player flexibility to sometimes not be dropped, to be rotated. There's a lot of things that, will be tested. And ultimately, it's been rosy up until now. And there's going to be, in that period, I was going to say it, we're probably going to lose one of those games. It happens. That's football for you. We're more than likely, in fact, to lose. But it's about how you recover from that. It matters. And as fans supporting the club when things get difficult, I think Spurs fans, isn't just Spurs fans, but if you look at social media, for example, very quick to jump. I think if we can be patient and get behind Frank and trust him and the players is the best way to go about this for me. But Martin, I've got to ask this question purely for be devil's advocate. I'm really happy with our start to the season, but I mean, the obvious thing to say is, should we have picked up more points earlier in the season before that international break? Look at Wolves, look at Brighton, Bodo Glimt, all games we could and maybe should have got more points out of going before. We know this is a tough run now. Should we be sitting in a place where we've got a few more points on the board? And that's real credit to our performances and how we've been playing.
No, not in my opinion, because Thomas Frank has just started. He still was probably experimenting slightly in the first game. So the fact we lost to Bournemouth just 1-0, we can be actually happy that our goal difference hasn't been at such a deficit. We just scraped the draw to Wolves, which we probably would have lost last season. And during that time, we've also beaten Manchester City away, which we have become their bogey team. But I think I've been very impressed with the amount of points we've got. I mean, we sit third in the league table and we've collected 4 points from 2 Champions League games into the next round of the Carabao Cup. So I personally feel that we shouldn't be looking back at, we should have collected more points from Wolves, or definitely the performances should have been better. But the points that we're sitting at, I'm definitely happy.
Okay. That's good to hear. Thank you very much. And the last question before we wrap up for the podcast, I'm going to ask you always how many points we get in these next 7 games. I'll quickly run through them again. So, although it is 7 games, that one against Newcastle, because it's in the Carabao Cup, they're going to exclude from this because obviously you can't get points. So, the 6 games are Aston Villa at home, Monaco away, Everton away, Chelsea at home, Copenhagen at home, and Manchester United at home. So there we go. Those are the points available. Gary, I'll start with you. How many points do you think we're going to get for you? 18 available, I think. Yeah.
We're going to beat Villa. We'll beat Monaco. I think we'll beat Everton. So that's 9. Chelsea. Let's do it. I think we'll probably be our downfall. Copenhagen, again, I think we better do them going. And Manchester United, I can't see them turning up unless they start really putting into performances over the next 6 weeks. So, I mean, I've pretty much predicted us to win all those games by 1, which is slightly unspursy. So let's just go with 6 of the 5, whatever that is. 5 of the 6, whatever that is.
So I think that would be my maths is awful, so bear with me.
15.
So it would be
15
from 18. Okay, I'd take that right now. I'm sure you would, Gary. That'd be great.
I'll take what we're doing now. I'm really happy with the position we're in now. 3rd, unbeaten. We've lost 1 game. Thomas Frank's first things out of his mouth during his press conference. We're going to lose games. So we're going to lose them. But for me, it's the way that we've gone behind in games and we're coming back in the ones we've drawn. That would not have happened in the last 2 seasons. So I'm really pleased with how it's going. And
realistically, I think we can all probably agree that it's going to be difficult to be in 3rd position after all these fixtures, but it's about still being in that conversation. It's about resilience, that team fight, and performing well. So, well said, Gary, on that. So, Martin, I'm going to come to you next. I'm interested to see how many points you think we're going to get from these 6 games.
Yeah, so very positive. Me is still less positive than Gary, so I'm going for around 13, but I'm definitely over-exaggerating because during that period, we've got Everton at their stadium. They actually haven't lost there yet. They've even beaten Crystal Palace, who were 18 games unbeaten and won 2 trophies during that time. So that's going to be a very difficult game that doesn't look that on paper, but we do struggle. We struggled at Goodison Park. Now we're going to their new stadium, and I think that's going to be a very, very difficult game. So the games I believe we will win, or I hope we will win, are Aston Villa, AS Monaco, Copenhagen, and Manchester United. So that's roughly that's 12 points, and hopefully we can pull out a draw against Everton and Chelsea. So I'm hoping if we even had 12 points out of these 18 possible, I'll be very happy. But I'll be certainly the points are very important, but hopefully the performances against especially the big teams, how we perform, it's going to be very interesting to see how Thomas Frank has now adapted in these first few months. So I'm saying 13 out of 18.
Okay, fair enough. I had 12, 13 in my head. I actually look at this and go, there's a possibility we don't maybe draw any of these, but realistically, that's going to be unlikely. But when I worked it out, one thing I did have for sure is I think we'll win the 2 Champions League games, which is huge if you think about it. So, no, appreciate that, Martin. Come to you, Dustin, last but absolutely not least. How many points are we getting for you?
So are we including the United game as well? I'm not sure.
Yeah, including the United game, but forget about the Newcastle away and the Carabao Cup, because obviously it's not a points game.
Sure. So I think we beat Villa. I think we beat Monaco. I think we beat Everton. We probably draw to Newcastle. I think we lose to Chelsea. And we beat Copenhagen and we beat United.
So that's what, 15?
Yeah, 15.
All right.
Yeah,
15
but
points.
I'll caveat that saying that if we have many players, we have 6 players that we have no replacement for if they get injured. So if any of those get injured, all bets are off. And the 6 players are Kudus, Xavi, Paulinho, Romero, Van de Ven, and a fit striker, because all our strikers are out. And that's yeah.
That's a great way to put it. Just you won't list a striker, just a fit striker. Because that seems to be hard to find at the moment when we have 4 strikers, 3 certainly natural strikers. But hey ho, I think that wraps up nicely though for this episode of the Scarfey Spurs Talk Podcast. Hopefully next time you'll be hearing from me. We'll be talking about a Tottenham win against Aston Villa. That's the aim anyway. But thank you very much for watching. Let's go through and see where you can find my panel across all of social media. Thank you to all 3 of you for coming on. Firstly, Gary, thank you very much. Where can people find you on the socials, and talk to people a little bit about, what you do across social media?
Yeah, you can find me mostly on Twitter, to be honest. I started TikTok as well in the last month. About 3 weeks ago. So I got about 500 people following me on there. It's pretty cool. I just put up some thoughts of the day, maybe every other day. So that's under Project Spurs Pod. So yeah, you want to follow me there. I'm just a big football fan, talk about football and Premier League, Serie A, La Liga, European football is a big one for me. Got a ridiculous football manager obsession, so if you like football manager, I'll probably drop in a lot of that as well, and got the new game coming out in 3 weeks. So yeah, just football really for me.
Lovely. Live, breathe it, and talk about it every day. That's what we want. Thank you, Gary, for your time tonight. It's been a good one. Thank you. Martin, thank you very much for coming on. A very solid second appearance for you. I mean, you're always welcome back. Thank you so much. Where can people find you across the socials?
Thank you. So I've tried to improve my last finish to the podcast. So you can find me on Twitter, Martin _Frank. So that's FRANC. We've got a new manager who shares the pronunciation of my surname, but mine's not with a K, mine's with a C. And I use mainly Twitter just for some thoughts after the game or linked to Tottenham. However, I am planning on starting to edit some videos, starting off with some shorts on TikTok. So you can tune in the near future with that. So yeah, I'll be working on it. So thank you. And thank you for having me as well. And nice to meet you guys.
No, thank you. It's been a real pleasure. Absolutely. Let me know if I can do anything to share your content and help in any way. So all the best. Thank you, Martin. And Dustin, thanks so much for coming on. As I said, last minute at a crazy time. I don't know if you're going to say that's ridiculously late at night or really early in the morning. I'll leave that completely up to you either way. It's bonkers, I'll tell you that. But where can people find you across the socials?
You can find me on Twitter. That's Luminoir, LUMINOIR. And I talk about football a little bit, but I also talk about stuff that I work on in the AI and crypto space there.
Interesting stuff. I'll check that out. Thank you very much. Appreciate all of you for coming on. If you're listening on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Thank you for all support across all platforms recently. It's much appreciated. If you're listening via audio, please drop a follow and a 5-star review. But last but not least, the best bit, come on you Spurs. Let's hope for a win against Aston Villa.